Would I want my kids to go and work into retail today? No. The amount of retail leaders I speak to that have that same view, and, about an industry that they love and are passionate about themselves. Like, this is why the flow-on effects are just much more than, retail crime and someone losing some money. It's actually about an impact on a community, a city, an economy.
You're listening to the Retail Crime Intelligence Podcast by Auror, where we share actionable insights to help you reduce crime and violence in your stores.
Good afternoon, everybody. Super excited to be here to host the Auror 50 and 5 podcast with Phil, Alaina, and Raul. How are you all doing today?
Doing great.
Yeah, good.
Awesome.
Good. Thanks for having me part of the Brains Trust for today.
Yeah, it's always good to have somebody, from halfway across the world join us, Phil, from New Zealand. And Raul and Alaina, where are you this week?
So I'm actually in Houston with one of our retailers at their holiday meeting. So it's been a really good week so far.
Houston, Texas. Raul?
I'm in Chicago at the CC Rock. I'm at a training center for Homeland Security Institute with a bunch of cops and retailers downstairs. It's amazing. It's been a great couple days.
Great. I am actually home in Mooresville, North Carolina. I got to tell you, if we compared miles and weeks and nights on the road, I think the four of us could put us up against anybody at Auror. And you look at retail crime today, in 2025, you look really the difference from a pre-COVID and post-COVID world. I mean, it changed. It continued to change, right? For the wrong reasons, unfortunately, which is crazy. And for you, it's just got to be just breathtaking to see kind of where you were and now where we all are because of your vision, with Tom and James and others to get us to this point. So I'll jump in. Why Auror? When I had the opportunity to work at the Loss Prevention Foundation, Auror was a great partner of the LPF. And the more and more I learned about Auror and the purpose of Auror and retail crime intelligence, right, and trying to make that impact on safety in the community, it was a no-brainer for me to come, join the good fight and help reduce crime and violence in retail today, which is a great segue into what we're here to really chat about is Auror's mission of 50 and 5. So, Phil, I was in Arizona at Auror Connect with several of our customers and our partners, and you took that opportunity to launch our mission of 50 and 5. So can you tell the listeners more about that and specifically what is 50 and 5?
We launched a bold new mission this year, and we've been doing this for over a decade now. And the focus had always really been on initially, how do you help provide the visibility around retail crime, both to the retailers and also to law enforcement and the public at large. But the big change that we've seen over the last couple of years is just this increase in violence within retail and within retail crime. And it got me thinking around, how do we help to take the offensive on that problem? So 50 and 5 for us is how do we reduce violent retail crime by 50% in the next 5 years? And when I suggested that to the team initially, everyone was like, well, is it even possible to do? And I was like, well, if we don't set out to do something bold in this space, that's going to help guide us as a company, our product decisions, how we work with our customers, we've got to go for it. Because the impact on people in stores, we're talking team members, we're talking customers, it's horrific. And I got to a point where it was going why would we be accepting this as a community and as a society? And that's a very similar trend happening right across the world. What role can we play to help with that? And so we decided we'd launch 50 and 5, and the uptake from our customers and from others in the industry have been great and getting behind it. Lots to do to make this a reality. But I am staking the company and our mission on that as our focus.
So purposeful, as I go back to why I'm here, as we continue to work together to be able to take crime and violence out of retail. I mean, no customer ever goes to a retail location to be involved in a safety incident while they shop, right? No employee ever signs up to go work at a retail store to be involved or being harmed by an individual or group of individuals coming into the store. So really kind of driving that purpose home. But it takes a village, as they say, right? I mean, it can't be one retailer or two retailers, right? It's all of retail banding together. It's law enforcement coming together. It's legislation changes to make this happen. No small task. 50% in 5 years, right, is significant. And it's something I know that, our company is behind. And we have a lot of customers that are behind that as well, too. So Raul and Alaina, so when you hear or think about 50 and 5. If you're talking to colleagues in the industry, if you're talking to your neighbors at a cookout, like, how do you describe it? What does 50 and 5 mean to you? And how do you explain to folks the why behind it?
For me, it means a coalition of the willing, Terry and team. I talked about it when I was with HSI. If you want to do more, you get this group of people, individual sectors that maybe wouldn't have met each other, and get them a common mission. And nobody wants to see violence in stores. We all have family members, friends that either are shopping on a daily basis or work at these places. Police officers are working off-duty jobs at these places sometimes and are getting hurt. There's been deaths, beatings. And I think from a law enforcement perspective, it really irks me and it gives me a lot of passion to continue to do the job that we do here at Aura. It's an extension of what I was doing at Homeland, getting the coalition of the willing on board to do more. What sector do you come from? What world do you come from? Where do you work? And how can you contribute to that? And that's sometimes looking across and inviting others to participate in your community, in meetings with mayors of your community, going to the city council meetings, going to retail engagements with law enforcement, anything and everything to say we can't be allowing this to happen in our community, for stores to close and not having an ability to shop in comfort and in peace, and then have that same comfort and peace for the folks that are working there. So that's how I describe it. And I get the privilege of speaking both to LE and retailers. And this coalition of the willing is starting to make a movement. It may not all be called 50 and 5, but they all have this ability to lean in when we start talking about doing more. So that's what it means to me, and that's how I'm out speaking about it in the community. So, Alaina?
Yeah, for me, it really is just a proactive game changer is how I look at it. We really have to be proactive whenever we're talking about what can we do to kind of get in front of things. But to me, this really changes the game because it draws a hard line in the sand, what we're willing to do and how we're willing to get there and who's going to lock arms with us, who wants the same thing for not only their associates, but for their customers too. And I think that if we're all in this together and we bring the best innovation, the best tools, the best intelligence that we have, especially with the partnerships that we already have and the partnerships that we're going to continue to create. So I know from a retail perspective, folks are really excited about this because it's something that we know is important. The time is now. And if we just act, it's going to be something that we can achieve together.
Terry, I want to throw it back at you because I remember when I mentioned to you that I was thinking about this new mission, your eyes just lit up. And I feel like you've got like a renewed zest for life with this mission. So like, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, you know what? Safety in retail means everything to me, right? From a guy who started working in retail stores a long, long time ago. I've seen people firsthand get injured by bad people, right? I have had to get involved in physical altercations to protect customers and employees back in the day when you were actually really allowed to do that. Not so much anymore, right? But by doing the right thing by people. Going back to no employee ever comes to work to be injured by a bad actor. No customer ever comes into your front door to be injured by a bad actor. So it means something to me. It's super purposeful when we can reduce those numbers. You know, in talking to a lot of AP leaders over the last 10 to 12 months, inventory shrink seems to be leveling out a little bit, going down in some instances. But you know what's not going down, Phil, is organized retail crime and violence in retail. That's not going down, right? That continues to rise. So when we can work together and work with law enforcement and take these individuals out of retail locations and keep people safe, it means the world to me. So, yeah. Thanks for asking. The education piece, Raul, like from a law enforcement standpoint, I mean, that's still a huge curve to tell the story to law enforcement, how big the problem is. And again, it's not the numbers. We realize that it's 80 billion or 100 billion or 120 billion in the loss, right? It's the violence in retail today that impact people for years and years to come, right? Because nobody ever plans on getting assaulted in that. So the one thing about Auror, right? So we collect a lot of data. We collect a lot of stats, right? So Alaina, like statistically, when we say like 1 in 10 events in retail are violent today. So what are some of the most confronting or emotional stories that you've heard from retail workers on the front lines?
One of my personal experiences from a previous retailer is we had a new associate that was a key carrying manager, and there were locking cases, and there was a group that we were investigating that was going from store to store. And when they couldn't break the case, they called her over and tried to snatch the key like from around her neck. But of course, it was a lanyard and it wouldn't. So she literally fell to the ground, and they drug her by her hair to the front of the store and then punched her to get the key off of her neck so they could unlock the case. She maybe had been working for like 3 or 4 weeks, and this was her very first job, not only ever, but in retail. And so I remember getting that call on a Sunday afternoon. That's something that I specifically remember. It was the fall, and I thought, this poor girl, there's no way that she's going to want to come back to work. And this is something that's going to impact her for the rest of her life. So that's one that sticks out for me specifically when I was in retail. But even now we hear of stabbings and people being assaulted, or people getting frustrated at self-checkout, right? Because they're skip scanning and they're confronted, and they're knocking people out or throwing carts at folks or throwing merchandise, and everyone's getting injured. So it's a reality, unfortunately, that we face every single day. And it's one of those things. And Terry, I'm sure you can relate. Your phone rings and you're just like, goodness, like what could it be this time, depending on what area of the country they're calling from, because you know that it's probably going to be bad news and something that you're going to have to respond to. So I think everyone is dealing with this every single day, and it's something that weighs really, really heavy on LP folks and the in-store teams, because they know that there's just such a further reaching implication than just that one instance, right? Like it just goes beyond that. So that's just a couple of things that come to mind for me.
And it's predicting behavior. Sometimes we can do that, right, with predictive analytics. Sometimes it's not predictable, right? When you look at what's happened in retail in the U.S. in the last couple of weeks, right? Up in Michigan, some crazy son of a gun went in, stabbed 12 people at a Walmart store. Over the weekend, 2 people were shot in a Target parking lot. I saw in the news recently. CVS, right, was involved with the shooting recently in the CDC, where the guy fortunately didn't kill anybody in CVS, but he killed himself. I mean, the violence that come in, like the training with employees on what to do when you talk about whether it's run, hide, fight, or, avoid, deny, defend, just the constant, training. How do you de-escalate situations when they happen in a service desk? Or, the example you just used is horrific, right? That young lady is going to carry that with her for years, if not forever.
When you think about that violence and threats are happening every single day in every single store, it's like, what other industry do we accept that to be okay, that you go to work every day expecting to be abused? And honestly, law enforcement is probably one of those areas where, you've got to gear up every day for that. But if you're an office worker, you don't expect someone to walk into your office every day and punch you in the face, right? But this is what we're putting our children into, our youth. Grandmothers working their last job, and they didn't sign up for that. This is what almost frustrates me, that there's this acceptance by some that, that is just part of working in retail now. And, one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about 50 and 5 is that I was with a retailer from a major city, and they said, well, we no longer put on women to work after 4 p.m. in our stores in the central city because it's too dangerous for them. And you go, well, over 60% of our retail workers are women, and now we're saying that they can't work because it's not safe enough. Is that a city or a community I want to live in? Hell no. So that's why we're going, do something about it.
Yeah, that doesn't solve the problem, to your point. Just because you put males working in retail after 4 o'clock isn't going to solve the bad actors and the individuals and the repeat offenders from continuing to come into our stores. Raul, now in your new life here at Aura, when you look at ORC, in retail, how does that compare to what your prior life was at HSI from an ORC standpoint?
Yeah, so we addressed it as a continuum of crime. It's opportunistic crime that's associated with many different types of transnational organizations that are making money, right? So we saw the ability to go after some of the finances, the illicit finance ability to move money through banks, see if we could identify that. That's what we were focusing on at HSI, cargo theft, South American theft groups, which led to the gift card fraud initiative. So all those were really great work. What I'm seeing now is ties into vehicle theft, gang networks operating solely to work crews across the country. The big case out of Texas that just got released in the news, where you had over 200 suspects working like an operational controlled drug nexus or organization that had deployed resources across the country just to steal and report back to their boss and then ship it overseas. So this is that continuum of crime that we talked about. And, law enforcement has bits and pieces of information of these networks. But in order to do more, in order to make an impact, we have to kind of continue to educate them on how this is tied to those additional networks that we always talk about, and then share that information in a secure way. I think Alaina put it very, very eloquently. This is critical intelligence that is sitting in retailers' hands, and or the law enforcement teams have it. And we need a secure place where we can provide that safe space to work in a digital platform. And Aura provides that. And I think that's the difference that I've seen, and continue to push it as I go out and speak to both sides, retailers and law enforcement.
So as a follow-up to that, Raul, like the individuals that you were investigating and ultimately arresting, talk about the danger factor. What did you find in some of these recoveries outside of just merchandise?
Well, I'll give you an example of a case out in California, South American theft groups doing B&Es, breaking and entering, but also hitting multiple stores. 2 federal agencies, ours and another one, working that group for a period of a few years. Very violent, tracking some individuals that may own jewelry stores and knowing exactly when the jewelry is coming out, violently beating them. That trend was 3 years ago. I was just in a meeting in New York with a bunch of retailers after NRF, and I heard another federal agency, they were very openly talking about a horrific beating of an elderly person who owned a jewelry store. And it was the same MO, tracking them, figuring out when they're going to be moving any of their jewelry and or taking cash deposits, and then violently beating them even after the theft. So, is it connected directly to the crime, or is it just the fact that they can do it and get away with it? It's probably a little bit of both. And that doesn't work either for any of us. It doesn't sit well with law enforcement. It doesn't sit well with retailers. It shouldn't sit well with anybody that sees that happening, and they should want to do more. And I think as I go to these events and cops are trying to tie these networks into potentially other cases that they're already working, if it be a vehicle theft, gun cases, drugs, how can they tie that into a prosecution, educate the prosecution on the severity of this group's impact in the community, and try to get them charged legally with evidence as fast as possible, and get them off the streets and have them stay there to make it safe.
That's deep work, Raul. I understand too that your son is possibly following in your footsteps.
He's considering it, so I think one of the things we talked about at home is never push our kids to do anything, let them figure out their own path, guide them with the guardrails as parents, keep them in the straight and narrow. But if they want to follow, so yeah, the idea is that he's considering following in my footsteps. So we're very proud of him, and we'll see what happens. It's a huge responsibility to slap on a badge and a gun and to serve the public. We're first and foremost public servants to the community. So if he gets there, I'll be as a proud dad as there ever was.
Phil, when you think about family and think about community, like I know you have 4 children. They're younger, but they're teenagers and they wanted to go work in retail. What advice would you have for them today?
I think this is why, again, I end up so passionate about this problem, because if you just zoom out for a second and look at retail crime more generally, like the impact it has, like we say it's a city killer, right? Like just the impact it has on a community is massive and far-reaching, all the way to stores closing down and you can't get your essential goods or your medicine. And then you go like, yeah, for your kids, like I was saying, like it's often everyone's first job is in retail. That's where you learn your life skills. How do you interact with people? How do you sell things? How do you be part of a team? And how do you get a good work ethic? If you take away the opportunities of doing that, well, what else are they going to do? And so that's one of the things I think about is like, would I want my kids to go and work into retail today? No. The amount of retail leaders I speak to that have that same view, and, about an industry that they love and are passionate about themselves. Like this is why the flow-on effects are just much more than, retail crime and someone losing some money. It's actually about an impact on a community, a city, an economy. One of probably the highest taxpayers in every county, every state is the local retailers. They are generally the highest employment comes from retail. They are the places that you go for, shopping for your groceries and for your medicine and everything else every week. And so it's actually a pillar of the community. And we're sort of allowed for the narrative to be that it's okay to steal, and almost whether people can't afford it. But again, when you look back at the stats, sure, there's a bit of that that's occurring, but the majority of what's happening, it's organized crime. It's linked back into gangs, guns, and drugs. And this is sophisticated operations where they're shipping products internationally. They're shipping things across the border. They are bringing people into the country to steal. Like, that is not someone trying to feed their family. That is a full-on operation. And it leads into much more serious things too.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, the petty shoplifters aren't the concerns of retail and society today. Petty shoplifting has been around since the beginning. Since the first store opened up, wherever that was on the earth, petty shoplifting has been there. Myself, I'm a retail family, and you all know this. My wife's a pharmacist, right? So she's been a pharmacist for a long, long time, right? So it's talking with her on where do you park when you close the store at night, being aware of your surroundings, right? Make sure you never leave the store by yourself, never go and open up a store by yourself, those types of things. How do you de-escalate a situation and call for help when you need it, right? My youngest son is 19. He did an internship this summer, and he spent all summer at Lowe's stores. So it was the same thing. Like, again, where are you parking your car? Are you aware of your surroundings, people coming in? If you see somebody doing something inappropriate, what are you going to do? How are you going to handle it? Who are you going to take as a partner? I mean, those are the things that I talk to my family about, because things are different today in 2025 than they were several years ago. So let me ask all of you a question. So I'm going to throw this out there. What's a myth about retail crime that frustrates you most? Like something that people consistently get wrong?
That it's really not affecting anybody in the community, that it's, like you said, petty shoplifting, that it's just tied to a smaller group of individuals, that there's not money to be made. I think that's the one that irks me the most personally. But as soon as you educate them a little bit on the volume and how they're tied to these bigger criminal organizations, I think their eyes are opened up. They're like, oh, and I didn't think that would be such an issue. And there's no better example than the gift card fraud coalition that's happening now, and the identified networks that they've been able to figure out who they are. So that's kind of what I see, Terry.
I would say from my perspective, there's a misconception that retailers get to claim all these losses on insurance. So technically they're reimbursed for anything that's stolen or that leaves the store. And that is most certainly not the case. That does come out of the P&L, and realistically, it ends up impacting the consumer, because that in turn potentially could make the cost of goods go up. So no, you're not being able to claim anything on insurance. It is just a straight loss to the store while it impacts so much else.
And for me, just almost building on that, it's the feeling that it's okay because it's a big faceless corporation who's just losing some money and it doesn't matter, right? And it's actually all about that frontline retail worker who is being put in harm's way. And also, for them, it is their store. You are stealing from them because they're the ones that have to wear it at the end of the day, whether it's violence or whether it's the fact that the next customer can't buy their products from them. And also, the customers in the store, the good Samaritan who sees something going on and tries to help out or gets involved and then gets injured themselves. Like there's impacts on them too.
Yeah, 100%. And we've all seen that, whether it's living it, working in retail, or on the news, right? The customer chasing a shoplifter, or on foot or on car, getting involved. And what they don't realize is they don't realize how dangerous these people are, right? They have no idea if they have a weapon. And like you said, the amount of violence, what they'll do to get away, it's endless. I mean, beyond just pushing somebody out of the way, it's hitting somebody, Phil, like you mentioned, like square in the face, or grabbing a tool or a weapon or something to use against them as well too. So, Alaina, putting your AP hat back on, you're kind of like an old school. We talked about like reacting to crime versus preventing crime, right? That was kind of a paradigm shift. I'm like, reacting to crime was take him to the ground at all costs. We're going to take you to jail. Then when we realized that probably wasn't the best thing to do, as that evolved, how do you prevent the losses, right? And obviously is a major focus on what we do here at Aura on preventing the losses. So walk us through, like, what does that look like in reality today with some of the partners that you work with?
Yeah, I would definitely say that we are so well positioned from the fact that we have structured data that goes into the platform and results in actionable intelligence out. The criminal network that we've been able to build within Aura is just incredible, and being able to have the notifications come through in real time on the mobile app, or being able to understand why someone is violent, aggressive, erratic, or is causing issues in stores is so critical. Even the vehicles that are associated with them that might be of concern. But knowledge is truly power when it comes to retail crime, and having that information in the platform and at your fingertips in seconds is something that you just can't replace. And so having the information right there, being armed and guarded to make the right decisions at the right time, not only for your safety, but the safety of other associates and customers, is really key and critical. And that's what Aura provides. And that's how we're going to tackle this 50 and 5, is with the intelligence that we have and the fact that we have really good people in place in these retailers that also want to see an impact be made in their community.
Great point. Like I said, I think that's probably the 12th time we've talked about community, right? And making an impact, right? So let's chat about tech. You know me, I love tech. I can't get enough tech. I'm the most technical guy this side of the Mississippi that works for Auror. So specifically, let's chat about AI a little bit. So AI is changing everything, right? I mean, it touches a lot of things that we do every single day. It's obviously changing the AP, LP landscape. What are some of the potential rewards, challenges associated with AI adoption in retail today?
I think technology generally, but AI is being utilized for some amazing use cases. And if we hone in now on sort of retail crime 50 and 5, the way that our retailers have been looking at it is, historically, it's been very hard to look at every single event that occurs in their stores. There is a lot of crime that occurs. There's a lot of events that happen. And they've been reliant on human investigator to go through it and try and figure out which ones they should be looking into more, which ones are connected to other cases, who are the people that they should be worried about entering their stores next. And so traditionally, you'd have these cases being built over 2 or 3 years. There'd be a big headline number at the end of it. $50 million has been, crime ring's been stopped. But you've had 2 or 3 years of people just offending across the country. So bring in technology and AI, you can just start to do that at scale and at speed. So suddenly you know who your top 10% of people are that you should be looking into. You're being told by AI, hey, here are the cases that you aren't looking at that you should be looking at. You want to do an investigation? Don't spend 2 weeks building out a link analysis chart. Click a button and pull that together. And suddenly, 1, you're seeing the bigger picture. 2, you can start to work with other retailers. And 3, when you go to law enforcement, back to Raul's earlier point of these cases are bigger than what law enforcement are even aware of, right? And often they go, oh, well, actually, we know that group or that person because we're doing something else on them as well. So you start just to get this like almost at the most basic level, like speed, efficiency, and effectiveness really come to play. And then you can start to look at, well, what else can you do with that on the proactive side? So how do you use license plate recognition or facial recognition to start to understand when someone enters your area, your parking lot or your store, why should I be concerned about that person? Is it because they previously carried a knife or a hammer on them? Last time they came, they threatened to come back and shoot the store up. And those are unfortunately real life examples. But if you can provide that intelligence to the security guard or the store manager on the shop front, suddenly they can then decide how they're going to interact or not interact with that person. So like AI is changing how a retailer understands retail crime across their entire, store footprint, and then how to deal with it.
I just look at the 2.5 years that I've been here of all the updates and additions to what we do today, right? And AI is just it's a piece of it. It's not all of it, but it's a piece of it, right? When you talk about what we do with connected dots and case linking and really how robust and just what the data tells you about the repeat offenders, not only from a monetary standpoint, but going back to the violence, right, that they cause in our stores, right? I mean, they're 4 times more likely to commit a violent act in a store as a repeat offender. And we know that because the data shares that. And the collaborate feature, that we turned on to be able to work retailer to retailer is a game changer. I'm sorry. I mean, we're the only show in town that does that, right? Which is just really cool that the Walmarts of the world can work with the Krogers of the world and the CVSs of the world, right? And investigating the same individuals and groups of individuals. And then Raul pulling in law enforcement and realizing like, oh, wait a minute, Oh, that retailer already has pulled law enforcement in. So now I get to the benefit of that and working together. And that's how 50 and 5 really comes to life in my world, is the working together, right? That's how we can identify holistically with all of our partners and all of our customers as well, too. So,
And that's also just, I think, something we almost stumbled upon when we started the company, because we didn't have any background in the space. We didn't quite understand why there'd be issues with retailers working together or retailers working with law enforcement. So we designed the entire product from the ground up around the ability for people to work together, no matter who they actually worked for. And so when you talk about things like, crime linking or collaborating with others, like, we inherently build that into the product, because in our view, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to work on this stuff together? Why wouldn't you want to be able to easily get links across things? And so that's why, AI as a term is pretty new, and it's been thrown around a lot these days. But we've been working on that stuff for 5-10 years. And once it's built into the DNA of the product, that's when you can do the smart stuff. Like, a lot of people talk about the ability to do it. Most people can't, because they haven't architected their products around that. And so that's a big thing that we're trying to help people understand, is that you've got to have that from the ground up.
Those are great points. I'm going to jump in real quick, Terry. The reason why I think I told Phil this jokingly is he was looking at giving me an opportunity. I targeted Aura as well because of that particular topic. The fact that they were getting people to work together on repeat offenders, on intelligence sharing. I was a big intelligence sharing guy. I wanted to break barriers from federal agencies and get them to work together. So Aura was a natural extension. It really surprises folks when you show them the data that we have on these repeat offenders and how easy it is to take a step back and save everybody time, because these investigators, both on the retail side and law enforcement, are overworked. They have too many cases. And when you have actionable intelligence sitting in somewhere where they could have it legally through a private, or engagement, or through some kind of a policy engagement, they should be able to do that. And I think that's one of the things that draw me so close to Aura, and why we go out and speak about it so passionately.
For me, I think that everybody is just kind of like sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that's why, to me, I know that using the tools and technology that we know are available and ready are just going to be so key to our success as a whole. And it's exciting to see what we've been doing to progress that, but also to kind of be the leaders in that space to help our retailers understand how critical all of that information can be to actually help them be effective and better. Because, Raul, how many cases have we seen where it's so complex and so complicated that it's just even too difficult sometimes to articulate the baseline of how things work? And so if there's some way even to make that easier with the technology that's out there or what we're building in the platform, that's what makes me excited. Because when I look at the product that we have coming out and like what's coming and how that is even going to change it even more, it makes me really excited.
What's been interesting for me working with our partners, I get the best of both worlds to work with partners and prospects in Aura, is, the wall goes up immediately because of privacy. The retailers are focused on, well, we probably can't do that. Legal won't let us do that. They won't let us do this. And then you just see them slowly, like dominoes, fall, right? Because once they dig in and look at the facts behind how our platform is built, right? How secure it is, how information sharing is secure. And your data is your data. You don't share your data unless you choose to share your data. Companies catching up on AI policies, right? Because they realize, like, oh, we don't have one. Now we need to write one. And then they write one, and sometimes they're not 100% sure what they're writing, and taking us as partners to actually be part of the foundation of what they're putting together. Any thoughts on that? What you're seeing out there from our partners globally?
We see this so often with current customers. There's really a risk and brand exposure from not doing anything at all. There's actually more risk by not accepting the technology or not adopting it or not embracing what's there to protect them actually from an enterprise perspective or from potential lawsuits or from potential mishaps in store. So it's almost educating them on it's actually going to be worse for you if you do nothing at all, and explaining that to them.
It's a great point. And the other thing that comes up is more change management of and I understand there's so many priorities going on for a retailer today. But what we're seeing is that if you don't start to initially just even understand the true problem of what's going on, because, over the last 10, 20 years, stores don't report everything these days because it takes too long, and in their view, nothing happens, right? So there's actually a change management piece around the culture. And back to the point around that's almost accepted these days that there's violence in stores, store teams aren't reporting everything that's going on. And so actually the true nature of what an extent of what's happening in stores isn't always visible to leadership. And therefore they can't prioritize investments in that space. Or, there's always the next big thing come around the corner, from an operations point of view, from a sales point of view, marketing point of view. But if you don't get the safety of your team and your customers right, like, you end up not having a store in the first place to do those things in. So, like, I think one of the risks is that just retailers aren't moving fast enough to understand what's really going on in the stores and then doing something about it.
Yep, taking action. And we work with a lot of our partners and prospects to help tell the story, right? And to help navigate and to explain not only the problem within their own organization, but just as an industry as a whole. And I think that's what's just tremendous about our partners being able to share or connect any retailer with any of our partners anytime. Like, you pick one. Do you want to talk to them, see what they're doing, how they're utilizing our technology to help keep people safe? You name it, and we'll connect you with them, which I think is just really, really neat. You look at where we are today, the foundation of retail crime intelligence, right? Our launch, at least in the US, I know we've been doing LPR for 8 or 9 years globally, and now facial rec, RILA, and NRF. How did that come about, Phil? Like, where did that come on the roadmap? Is that something that's been talked about for a few years, several years, or something that said, you know what, this is a big piece of what we have to do to continue to reduce 50 and 5 and help hit our mission of 50 and 5?
Yeah, I mean, I've been following facial recognition tech for the last 10 years, and historically it hasn't been accurate enough, or there's been too much bias in those systems. The last 2 years, everything has changed. Like, back to the point around technology and AI, just the adoption of it, but actually the change in computing power means that facial recognition today is super accurate. And the things that we looked at was, one, this violence piece, like, that keeps increasing. Secondly, the technology has changed. And thirdly, every retailer is looking at it because they're looking at how do they help keep their store safe. And so there's lots of providers out there of facial recognition technology. And so we actually took a different angle and said, well, can we help, if retailers want to put in that technology, can we help build the safeguards, the processes, the workflows, the guardrails around this stuff to ensure that it's used correctly, to ensure that it's used for the right reasons, and to make sure that good customers aren't ever impacted, but those bad actors, they are. And so it's something we've been looking at very closely, and we're now working with our retail customers on, is how do you have an end-to-end solution around that space to move from the visibility of retail crime into the proactive prevention and stopping of crime before it happens in those stores. And again, with a real focus on those high harm offenders. So those that have previously been into a store, they've threatened with a weapon. The technology itself doesn't necessarily help you a whole lot if it's just providing you faces. You've got to have the context and the intelligence to understand why and what should the next step be. Because if it is someone that's previously been in and threatening you, do you actually want to approach them, and get up in their face? Probably not. So having that intelligence to hand means that you can make the right decision, which could be doing nothing. It could be providing better customer service. It could be calling law enforcement.
That's the beauty of Auror and working with the partners for them to be able to direct their associates on how to handle that situation, just as you mentioned that. You look at post-incident image matching in our platform, and now we look at facial rec, to where you can have a person of interest with a vehicle of interest, right, with a history of crimes that have been committed within that retailer, right, can set you up for a better resolution to get this individual out of your store and maybe arrested and prosecuted if all the cards fall in that direction based on the company policy. So really enjoyed the conversation today. I'd like to take it around as we wrap up. And if a listener that tunes into our podcast today remembers only one thing from this podcast, what do each of you hope it is?
I would just say, remember that you're not in it alone. There's so much that goes on within a given day, and I think when you're in the trenches and there's so much going on and you're inundated with things all the time, you're like, gosh, I'm the only one, that's dealing with this, or you just think it's you. But remember that you're not in this alone, and there's other people out there that are going through the same things. But what's more important is there's tools out there that can help you make a difference and really help your retailer as a whole. And there's a lot of people that are behind you to see you succeed and want your stores to be safe and your communities to be safe as well. So that's what I would say. Just remember that, you're in the fight with other people as well, whether it's another retailer, law enforcement, or Aura. Just lock arms with you and realize that there's other people that are doing the same thing and they can help you through it.
I would say share until you're uncomfortable. Most of us believe that they're restricted by policy and procedures, or they can't pass legal. Get the approvals, ask, join that coalition of wanting to do more. This is your community, whether you're a law enforcement, retailer, or just the public. Join that movement to say, hey, not in our city, not in our communities, and do something about it. You see these folks across the country doing more with little groups of people. You can be part of that. We proved it as a federal agency that moved resources to a huge initiative and then got other federal agencies to join. And there was already great work happening in the law enforcement space at the state and local level, but the feds were kind of, late to the game. So I think you can move the Titanic, but it's got to start with what Alaina said. You got to want to do it. You got to be part of that solution. So that's where my thoughts go as I kick it over to Phil.
A very interesting conversation. Always enjoy throwing around some of these ideas with all of you. The things I'd love people to take away, if you're a member of the public, hopefully you get a better understanding of how important retail and retailers are to the community that you live in. And if you're a retailer, be bold and make change. We can't keep doing what we've always done. And we'd love to have you as part of this mission, 50 and 5, reducing violent retail crime by 50% in the next 5 years. And I think we can do this together.
Yeah, for me, it's like we can do this, right? We can do this together. Raul, and what you just mentioned, like when David Ortiz went up and said, this is our effing city, not an RF city, right? And I think that's what it really comes down to, not in retail today. What we're not going to allow, we're not going to stand for it, right? So whether that's our employees, whether that's our customers, whether that's going back to the community to say, no, not here. We're not just going to turn a blind eye and let these individuals or groups of individuals conduct and cause harm and violence and loss in retail stores today. So retailers, law enforcement, community, and we will hit our 50 and 5 mission. So great conversation today, team. Really appreciate the time and looking forward to the next podcast. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Retail Crime Intelligence Podcast by Aura. Don't forget to follow and subscribe on your favorite podcast app.